So we're going to do a little lesson on the Beverly shear here. We use the Beverly shear for cutting sheet metal. If you're cutting straight cuts on sheet metal, this isn't the best machine. It can do it. The best machine for cutting straight cuts would be the foot shear that we have in another one of our videos. For the Beverly shear, we're using it for curved cuts. So we can do inside curves. That would be something like this here. If we're taking out that piece, that results in an inside curve, and we can also do it for outside curves if we're cutting off that piece there, okay? Let's show you the machine here. It's got a limitation on the machine, written right on it. We've written that it's for sheet metal only, and it's for 16 gauge maximum, okay? So this right here, we're not sure if we could use this. I've got a sheet metal gauge here, and it has little measurements on it to tell you what gauge we're dealing with. If I place this on here, it is fitting. The 18 gauge is fitting, the 20 gauge is fitting tight. There it is. So this is 20 gauge, 22 is not fitting on the gauge. So I've identified this as 20 gauge sheet metal. That's one way to do it. Now 20 gauge sheet metal has a measurement of 0.0359 inches. So I could also measure with a tool like this. I could set this tool to inches, zero it out, and I could measure. So we're getting 0.036. It's not quite 0.0359, but it's right there in the ballpark, okay? So I can identify what thickness the sheet metal is by measuring it a couple different ways. So this says 16 gauge max. This is 20 gauge. The higher the number, the thinner it is. So this is thinner than 16. If we measured this stuff here, it's going to measure at 14 gauge. Okay? So that measures in at 14 gauge. And 14 gauge is thicker by one step than 16 gauge. So this is too thick to be using here. So I won't be able to use that sheet metal. And I definitely don't want to use this kind of flat bar. This is 1/8 flat bar. If you were to cut this type of bar here, you're going to destroy this machine. We've already had a few of these break in the past. We don't want to break this brand new machine. If you want to cut flat bar, you can cut flat bar in a machine like this one here. This here is the bench shear, and we will do this in a separate video. All right, so I'm going to cut an outside curve first. It's really easy. All I do is grab the handle, and I'm using these just like a scissor here. And if I cut at the back of the jaws here, at the back of the throat here, I find it's a lot easier to cut a curve. It's a lot easier to twist. So if I cut at the front, I find it's harder to sort of twist my cut. So I'm going to open up these jaws all the way, line up the cut, and as I'm dropping, I am twisting my sheet metal, and it's following that line. Now I'm going to open up again and slide it in there, and twist some more. And once I start getting like to the halfway point, it sort of gets hard to twist this. It's becoming difficult. So again, open it back up and reinsert it and come at it again. So you're just trying to use the back of the jaws, and there you have it. Okay, that's an outside curve. And then if we're to do an inside curve, it's a lot more challenging because you're going to see me trying to cut, and it's going to sort of like want to cut into the main body of my project here. So we have to twist it, and let's just do this, and you'll see exactly how I position this on the machine. What we've got is this saddle over here, and I'm going to twist my project up onto this saddle as I'm making the inside cut. So it looks something like this. I'll start my curve and give it a twist, and then I have to twist my material around that saddle. You can see that this is spinning up over top of this jaw. There it is. It's a lot harder cut to make. It's hard to control. It takes practice, good hand-eye coordination. See, I'm missing my line, but that's okay. And you see that this material is sliding up the saddle in order to make this inside curve, which is a lot more difficult to do. I'd rather cut so that I have extra material left over instead of cutting my line off. Okay, that's how we would do an inside curve. Straight curves, I'll just give a little tip on a straight cut. If you make a straight cut, when you get to the end here, if you go all the way down, you end up nipping it and putting a dimple. And then when you try to go and start again, you've got a little dimple in your stock. I'll exaggerate that by doing a whole bunch of small ones. So there's a dimple, dimple, dimple. And you know, this is resulting in a really sort of, you can't really see it in the camera. It's not terrible, but lots of times there'll be these little dimple marks in it, okay? You don't want to close this all the way down like that. You don't want to bottom that out and create a dimple. You want to sort of cut down almost all the way and then slide this up as you lift and continue on. Slide it up and continue on. You don't want to be chopping at the tip here because that can create dimples. And also, you have to be really careful. You don't want to do this where you cut and then lift and slide it and then you miss the angle and then you end up with something like this where you have started your cut over and over again in different places. There's like these sharp spines. I don't know if it's showing on the video, but I can catch my finger on that really sharp point. That's from cutting and moving over, cutting and moving over, cutting, and doing this sort of like jagged chop, just like you can do with scissors and paper. So the trick is to slice part way down, slide up along the blade, and continue, slide, continue. And you're sliding as you lift the handle up, slide. And that way, you get one long, smooth, continuous cut without any pins or sharp points or dimples. And that's how you use Beverly Shear. Remember that when you're all finished here, that you take a look at the mess you've made and you put these things in the right place. I would be very careful with some of these. You don't want to hurt yourself. On the board here, we've got dustpans and hand brooms. And you should come along and you should clean up these pieces. Now, if you're ending up with pieces, excuse me, if you're ending up with pieces that are small and probably quite useless, then they can go into the recycling bin. If you're ending up with pieces that are larger and may still have a sense of purpose, then store that in the scrap box. This scrap box lives here and is a good place for usable scraps to go into. As you can see, people haven't been following that. So when you're here, take the time to clean up a few things. Maybe I'll get rid of a few of these and I'll do my part. And if everybody does that every day, this will eventually get sorted out and it'll be just the good, usable scraps. And that's it.